watching this for the first half day here and seeing all of the different statistics and all the different approaches on chaos. I'll add a few and then talk about really what my perspective of how companies should deal with all the change and the chaos that's happening, and then specifically what Travelport's going to do. So I think a lot of this has been shown before in much better graphics and pictures, particularly from Philip as we open, but there's extraordinary things that are happening. Obviously the technology change, the innovation, really globalization. I've got a couple of charts, we'll talk about this, but Travelport's a very global company. The US is one of our a relatively small market for us. And the extraordinary growth we're seeing in Asia and China, I'm sure you're all seeing in your businesses. So it was interesting this morning to see Hafner, for example, to talk that he really is still US focused and not getting leverage outside of that. Industry consolidation, a big deal. New entrants, a big new entrant, Google. New opportunities, dozens and dozens of companies here that are changing, changing this industry. Competition, real increased competition, whole issues of scale, and challenges to all of our business models. What's driving it? I won't spend too much time on this because you know it, but I think of these 5 factors, all are really material. The one that I think is going to drive the most is the ubiquitous mobility. I'll talk about an application that helps me out a little bit in a few slides here. All of these have factors, but this linkage of constant GPS, knowing where you are, has extraordinary applications for the travel industry, which is, by definition, always putting you in new places. So, what are the implications of these trends to the industry? First, let's talk about searches. We know Google's going to enter this market. Use Kayak as an example. They filed their S1 today, and they mentioned that they have 469 million search queries over the last 9 months. An extraordinary number. You put that in perspective with just Travelport as an example. We do 75 million searches a day. In other words, we do in 10 days what Kayak does in a year. The extent of the global network, as opposed to North America-centric, and the extent of how many people are looking for travel information. Impact on storage. It's made the ability to provide those searches instantaneously. The storage and the caching of memory has changed the whole game. So you can get instantaneous results from a GDS perspective, 4.5 billion potential fares in our network. And we can give you an instantaneous search for almost any of those fares, including significant combinations within 3 to 5 seconds. Personalization. This will be a huge change to the industry and will drive growth, because the more relevant we can make these searches, the more relevant we can match people with the network to do travel, it's going to drive it, and then the ability to obviously make it so much more specific to individuals. And last, of course, mobility. The trends are extraordinary on this, and it will continue. So just to put this again, kind of a basic chart. But I remind you that this is for 1 month. This is October, 1 month of 2010. 42 billion minutes on Facebook. The number's so large, it's hard to conceptualize. So let me put it in a different term for you. First of all, Facebook wasn't around 6.5 years ago. So all of a sudden, something has gone from 0 to 4.5 to 42 billion minutes a month. That's equivalent to 1 million man or women years at not just working days, that's 7 by 24 by 365. 1 million men or women are spending an entire existence for a year on Facebook that didn't exist before. Extraordinary impact of these things. If that's, whether it's overhyped or underhyped, that's significant, that kind of growth. And it will be a huge implication for our industry. Because people are not going to classically go anymore to static search engines or the traditional travel agents when determining the travel. They're going to use the place where they're spending 42 billion minutes a month. Won't spend as much time on this stat, but just again the mobility. Extraordinary amount of time online across multiple platforms. similar statistics in terms of just users and tweets on top of it. So you're not only spending time on Facebook, but you're communicating in a more rapid fashion with Twitter. So let me give an example of why I think the kind of startups that are going to happen and impact our company. And I'll do one out of San Francisco. I live in San Francisco. Unfortunately, I work around the rest of the world, so I only get about a third of my time there. But San Francisco is unique for those who have either lived or spent much time there, in that it is probably as bad a city for parking in the world. There's almost no parking spots. That's combined with almost no valet parking, so if you like to go out to dinner or entertain, that makes it more difficult. And then you combine that with probably the worst taxi service. It's not New York, it's not Chicago, you can never find a taxi. We'll call, they may answer the phone. If they happen to answer the phone, they may come, and usually 15 or 20 minutes late. So very, very difficult. So this company, Uber Cab, small company, recent startup, is doing a great job bringing together mobile and GPS. So what it does, fairly simply, is disintermediating a very, very inefficient industry. And so you can go sit at your restaurant. You don't have to worry about catching a cab. You simply hit a button. You go to Uber Cab on the system. And as you can see, you can track the car as it comes. So what comes up first is an immediate GPS matching of your location with their network of cars, black cars. You click, you get a user rated, so user rated on the car. You book the car, and then the classic thing we've all had is when you get to an airport, you're waiting for your black car. They always say they're coming, but usually they're not. Usually we'll be there in 5 minutes. We're right on the corner. Usually they're 15 minutes away. You can actually track it using Google Maps, and you actually see it come with an ETA the whole time. It's a cashless transaction, and they have a general model which is roughly 50% above a normal yellow cab. So again, the fusion of emerging technology and network is going to change everything. I think this type of application will significantly change the entire black car market, where the inefficient dispatcher scheduling and really makes it much more efficient at multiple levels. Exact example, and there are going to be hundreds of these applications changing our industry. Let's talk about global for a minute. These are such big numbers that I take a second to digest them. 26% of the travel was outside of the Americas and Europe in 2000. And you can see where we are now. But most importantly, what's going to happen for the investments that we're going to make over the next decade and the companies we're going to work. More than half of the travel is going to be in Asia, Middle East, and the rest of the world. That's where the investments have to be. So from a chaos perspective, being local is important, but this is where the growth is going to be. Another application on that is China. China is an industry that is particularly frustrating for those of us in the GDS industry. There's a monopoly there. They don't allow us to participate. And it's hard for most travel agents, certainly online, to build brands there. But look at the level of traffic growth we're going to see over the next, they've already seen. Effectively up a third over 3 years. So what does this mean? So what does all of these facts as they come together mean? What is the approach that you and companies should take when it comes to either riding this chaos or being killed by the chaos? And I would suggest that you're either going to take approach of an open approach in the broadest sense of the word, or a closed approach. And let's go down a few pieces of what that means. First is around transparency. The web and these level of social networks are not going to allow things to be opaque anymore. It's just the information is going to be too accessible, too available. So all content needs to be compared everywhere, at every point of sale, versus an opaque approach where a supplier pretends that it can have higher prices by suppressing content and effectively not allowing customers to see all the choices. Certainly things like Foursquare is showing that very few people talking as a community can impact things at a retail level. I think this is a broad overall theme. Second is how are you going to approach globalization? Are you going to try and do it all yourself in a closed world? Whatever worked in my current home country will work on an extended basis, a rigid business model? Or are you going to partner and get local expertise to drive global growth? I'll tell you, I don't expect to get to that giant China market on our own. I expect to partner to get there. Around technology, are you going to build everything yourself? Or are you going to buy small companies and innovative companies, many companies that are here today? Customer choice. Again, this is very aligned to the transparency and opaque point around customer choice. Are you going to embrace it fully? Or are you going to take a more restrictive, I'm going to control the customer and distribution channel? And so the customer choice, I think, from our industry, what it really means is customers can research and purchase travel from multiple vendors, whoever they want, either by piece or as a package, anywhere they choose. Or suppliers know better, or companies know better. We're gonna restrict content, and we're gonna drive people to channels that we think they need to buy from. Very different approach, and in a changing world, different implications for which approach. And then, are you a frenemy, or is the world all enemies? Many companies partner. I mean, one of the great partners of Orbitz is Expedia-owned TripAdvisor. Huge competitors, but also frenemies. Or is travel a zero-sum game that there's only so much that we're going to split and we're going to fight over every part between suppliers, vendors, and distributors? I'd argue in this new world of emerging changes, it has to be a more open approach. And the last slide I have is specifically what are we doing about it as Travelport. We're investing like crazy. We were building a product called Universal Desktop that will allow this kind of more flexible merchandising, this all types of content to be available, to the world. So our 75 million searches a day really become more relevant and include more things. We've got over 330 people programming, approaching 1 million hours, building what we think is a breakthrough product that adds this open flexibility. Universal API. We don't care what technology you want to get your content into our company with. We'll meet it whether you want to put it through traditional systems, or whether you want us to screen scrape it, or whether you want to bring it in through XML or whatever other protocol. We're building universal APIs that allow all information to come in. E-pricing. Obviously, our friends at ITA found a good buyer and have done a good job. We think we're a good competitor to them, and we're going to continue to invest in this market. And we're going to buy companies. Many companies like you out there that are investing. We bought a meta-search company, we bought a great payments company in eNet. That is the key. We cannot get caught in a must be invented here. On globalization, everybody, just as we all have to be thinking about investing on mobile, if you're thinking of only small markets, you're going to miss everything. We have huge investments with local people in BRIC markets, Middle East and Africa and Asia. And of course, partnering. A large part of being a network, and the GDS is a network that combines roughly 400 airlines, tens of thousands of hotels, with 65,000 travel agents. And our key to being that network in the middle is that we do support customer choice, price transparency, and providing ubiquitous travel content to our players. So with that, I want to thank you, and I know we're going to move over to this next session.